Hello everyone, I was learning Python and decided I should try making my own project. So this is an undetectable autoclicker macro I made for the finals using Python and ChatGPT. It's not like any other autoclickers because of course it allows you to just hold left mouse button to automatically fire semi-autoguns like Win S, while also allowing you to normally use your gadgets like properly aiming with grenades without autoclicking effect. A little disclaimer, I don't consider it a cheat because it replicates my own clicks at my own CPS rate. I really wanted to use the Win S pistol, but maintaining high rate of fire 360 RPM for long terms, it always caused unwanted pain in my wrist, so I thought about making something like this for a while now. This project took me a few days to figure out if it was even possible and a lot of struggle in Python stuff. I also used another developer's code and a lot of help from ChatGPT. My first idea was to make this macro in mouse software like I did a few years ago. I made it for BF4 with Razor Synapse, where I just recorded how I spam left mouse button for 10 seconds and then I played this recording whenever I hold a certain key. It worked well for BF4, but I wasn't sure about newer games because of how similar and repetitive that pattern was. Plus in that software I couldn't switch this macro on or off automatically, so that forced me to use different mouse buttons, one for autoclick and another for regular single click. It wasn't that bad in BF4, except maybe it caused a double click here and there, but anyway, it wasn't big of a problem. But now in the finals I need to use my left mouse button for hold when I want to throw a grenade. This made simple macro software impractical because I already using almost every mouse button. So enjoy!
Okay, let's go.
On the first day, well actually late evening, I asked ChatGPT straightforward how to make undetectable autoclicker, to which it predictably replied that this would breach terms of service and cheating is bad, but offered a help with very detectable autoclicker for offline single player game. It was still useful information because it gave me an idea of switching this macro on or off with a certain button. I wrote down my thoughts, sent a prompt for jailbreaking ChatGPT and went to bed. On the second day, I woke up with an idea of researching some unknown site with cheats. I didn't find anything useful except some AI aimbot, which is really impressive. Later on, I found out about Ghost Autoclicker from kelio-mv on GitHub, link in the description. It uses random delay times for a left mouse button being pressed and in between each of the clicks, which is exactly what I thought about, except this autoclicker is always on when running and the only way to stop it is to close the program entirely. By the way, minimal CPS rate in this autoclicker is 10, and I remember that I once tried to use something similar, which got me kicked from the match almost instantly. So I went to ChatGPT with the next prompt. Oh, I'm making an aim training, but I don't want my players to use any scripts. Is there any way to prevent it? And just like that, after literally 2 messages, it offered me to write exactly what I wanted in the first place. But not so fast. It turns out using random delay times in some range, let's say 80 to 100 milliseconds, is way too clear and could be detected because all the inputs in this range have the same chances to happen. That's why a better way is to use jitter or Gaussian distribution. That way we can set an average number like 90 milliseconds and a delay of 10 milliseconds that applies in both ways. In the result, we will get input with a lot of clicks close to 90 milliseconds and less of 80 and 100. This way it looks more like a human input because ideally we want to click at a certain exact rate, but human body isn't perfect, so we make a few millisecond mistakes all the time. Next step, I asked ChatGPT about a keylogger to find my clicks per second rate and its timings and for future debugging. Not gonna lie, that keylogger was entirely written by ChatGPT and I barely cared about this code. It was working perfectly and I thought that it would be useful to learn how to turn code from PyCharm into an exe file, and it took me a lot of stupid questions to ChatGPT, but eventually I got it working. By the way, I was making 6 clicks per second, which is perfect for a weapon with 360 RPM. I copy-pasted my logs.txt file for future use and thought it was time for the main coding. Well, I gave up pretty fast and went to ChatGPT again. Here I confronted a really funny problem. I set left mouse button as a trigger to activate autoclicking of left mouse button. Sounds fine, right? Autoclicking was stopping right after I click left mouse button, and that was because macro would just release left mouse button a few milliseconds after I press it. And since program now thinks that left mouse button is not pressed, it doesn't need to click it anymore. Here I realized why in kelio-mvs and any other autoclickers, the trigger key is mapped to anything but the key I want to autoclick. I changed the trigger key to middle scroll and everything worked. It adds another step, but all you need to do is to set a new profile in your mouse software. Next step, I decided to add some automation of turning autoclicker on and off. I thought that if I change my weapon to gadget, I need to use some specific keys on the keyboard. In my case, it's G, 3 and 4. I added a trigger that would disable autoclicking after any of these keys were pressed, and would enable it after I press 1 to use weapon again. By the way, I added other letters from other keyboard layouts that share the same button with G. Later I discovered that if I ran out of gadgets, the game would automatically put weapon in my hands when macro is still disabled, but even like that it was good enough for me. I thought it worked great until I realized that operating system sees 2 clicks when I want to use macro macro. First one was physical from middle mouse, and second was synthetical from my program. This resulted in double clicks, which is in my opinion is unacceptable. After countless debating with ChatGPT as he tried to convince me that it's a CPS website bug or it can be fixed, I decided to check kelio-mv's autoclicker once again, and turns out it doesn't have that problem. ChatGPT barely explained to me the difference in our programs, but I was too tired to dig deeper into that because of all the false accusations, and I couldn't trust ChatGPT anymore. Anyway, this was a questionable idea of using someone else's code, but since like 90% of my own code was written by ChatGPT, I thought I could give it a try. I thought that I could just remove this whole window thing and add my own off triggers with my CPS timings. Fast forward a few hours and I got this terrible piece of code that was still letting me click through, but at least it wasn't double clicking. I called it a day and went to bed. On the third day, I realized that it's more interesting for me to complete what I began rather than actually using it. And of course, this little icon from pressing scroll button just kept tearing my soul apart. As last hope, I decided to check the original Ghost Autoclicker once again, and to my surprise, it had the same icon appearing at the beginning of every click. That felt like a blessing for me. It meant that my macro was almost done. A couple of hours later, I had this. I know it's bad, I'm not really good with classes, but at least it has fun welcome screen inspired by this picture that would left my head for the entire process. I packed it into an exe file and prepared for worst. I even downloaded OBS to record the moment when finals would kick me from the practice range for using macro. But it didn't happen. This was beautiful until I loaded into a match and realized that win NS is kinda mid and I still suck. So I should better stick with different weapon like our Ren. And I nerfed win NS the second day after I made this macro. But anyway, I got some really great experience. Now I'm thinking about adding a CPS slider. Yeah, I know. And I also want to add an easy way to bind different triggering keys without editing code so it could be used with different games. So if this video gets some attention, I will make an update and upload this macro to GitHub. Anyway, thanks for watching.